Welcome to Irish Football Weekly. I am one of the hosts, Josh Benjamin, here with The Grueling Truth. You can catch our shows on our website, www.gruelingtruth.net. You can also catch us on other media such as Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, which now if you look in the App Store, if you have an iPhone, you can find our new app, The Grueling Truth, and subscribe to that. You can also find us on Google Music and iHeartRadio. I'm flying solo once again here on The Grueling Truth on Irish Football Weekly. Tony is a very, very busy man, and I appreciate his time when he can come on and give us some great insight and talk some Irish football. But he is away for this week, so it's just me. So if you want to sit back and take a listen, and I'll kind of ramble on for a little while. So last week, big win up in Spartan Field in East Lansing, Michigan against the Spartans. 38-18, and I want to kind of touch on some different things that happened within the game and some statistics that are kind of eye-opening for this Irish football team this year. First of all, they're 3-1, which is awesome. It's a good start for them. Could we be 4-0? Oh, absolutely. We're a couple plays away, but at this point, we got to forget about that loss and move on. So we are here talking about the Spartans of Michigan State against our Irish. Last week, 38-18 defeat up in Spartan land, essentially. And just want to talk about some different statistics here. Going with the offense, they had 182 yards rushing, which is not the typical output you would normally see, maybe a little more than that, over 200 for sure, but they got the job done, and so there's some other stats out there that I'm going to ramble on about that definitely go with the reasons why they were able to only have 182, and I mean only 182 yards rushing, and still get the win, a big win at that. They also had 173 yards passing, so if you look at yardage standpoint, it is pretty equal in that aspect, so a nice job there on at least having a balanced offensive game, which I'll talk about some individual statistics here in just a second. So the total offense was 355, which it's around that yardage mark. Usually about 400 is what they shoot for, at least what they're trying to get to. And so they just fell short there, but they did a great job with a couple different things, such as getting turnovers. They did an awesome job of capitalizing off those turnovers. They scored 21 points of their 38 off of turnovers, which is an awesome job on both sides of the ball. First of all, creating those turnovers, which the defense coordinator and the defensive squad did an awesome job of making sure they gave that offense some wiggle room to work with there and gave them some momentum to score quite a few points. So they scored 21 off of turnovers, which is outstanding. That's not normal, at least from our standpoint, when it comes to getting those turnovers and capitalizing on them. So just a huge statistic that I think needs to be pointed out very, very much, at least in this win, and hopefully that carries over with that defense. They got that defense rocking and rolling, and what I mean by that is they are definitely creating turnovers. Obviously, we talked about that just now. And also they are bending, but they are not breaking, folks, because if you would happen to look at the total offensive yards against our defense, you would think that we were a terrible defense. And there are plenty of things to work on. But yardage-wise, they gave up almost 500 yards of offense, and they gave up 18 points. And so obviously those turnovers play a key in that, but giving up almost 500 yards of offense and still holding them to 18 points, I think that's outstanding. That kind of says a lot of things about that defensive squad. First of all, we talked about the bend but don't break method and that philosophy, and they are resilient. They are passionate. They are flying around and playing with heart and passion. And I don't know, as a Notre Dame football fan, you have to love that stuff. And, of course, there are plenty things that that squad can work on. I'm sure Coach Kelly and his coordinators are talking this week about that and making those changes and working on those weaknesses. But outstanding job of being able to be resilient. And I think that's a huge play in how this defense is playing this year as a whole. So kudos to the defense for not giving up those points, and they will continue to work on, minimizing that yardage mark when it comes to the passing and rushing. So let me talk about the defense a little bit here. So they gave up 150 yards rushing, which isn't too terrible, but their average per rush was a little high, so I think that'll be preached a little bit. They give up 4.7 yards a rush. They want to be down in the 2 range when it comes to that, maybe even low 3s at best, or at most, I should say. They didn't give up any rushing touchdowns, which is great. So they are doing a good job in that red zone, which I'll talk about here in just a second. But they did give up 345 yards of air ball there, passing, and definitely they need to have that communication back in the play. And there were several times where they could have definitely taken advantage, and with that experience that they're having back there, which they got a ton of it last year as a young group, a young core. But they only gave up 6.5 yards per attempt on those passes, so I think that I think that's okay. I think if they're under the 10, 11 yard range, that's great. And so anytime those were completed, they gave up about almost 11 yards, which isn't the ideal way of playing that passing defense. But they'll live and learn. They'll move on, and they'll work on those things. Because Coach Kelly, those coordinators, that those new staff guys that are grinding every day to make those guys better and creating those relationships is outstanding. And speaking of relationships, and kind of just want to take a second to talk about the relationships that I think that the Irish coaching staff and the players have. Well, I happened to see a video on Facebook. By the way, you can follow me on Twitter at CoachJB4, and you can also find Tony Hunter, and Josh Benjamin, of course, myself, on Facebook. We can talk anytime when it comes to Irish football. But on Facebook, we found out that, or I found out, I should say, that there's a video that shows Coach Kelly with those players and that staff having an absolute ball after the game. Now, if we were about a year ago, which a year ago they were 2-2, Coach Brian Van Gorder, the defense coordinator, was fired. Coach Hudson replaced him. You wouldn't see a smile at all from any of those guys. It was dreadful, miserable, all the above. And obviously, winning cures a lot of things like that. But wow, I saw the video, and Coach Kelly and those players were just having a great time of just showing excitement, showing that hard work is paying off. And I absolutely love when coaches and programs together as a whole can cherish those moments and enjoy them, and those things carry on in the next game. And I think that'll be a huge positive coming out of this game and this year. So keep it up, fellas, everyone included there. So nice job. A couple other stats I want to talk about when it comes to the Spartan game. They were 8 of 14 in third downs, and that's a pretty good percentage there. And so those types of plays, and especially third down, that's crucial when you go back and look at the stat line and understand you have to be successful on third down. You're going to get into those quite a bit, and they did 14 times, and they got 8 of 10 or 8 completions, 8 successes on that out of 14. Now, on the defensive side, going back to that bend but don't break, and I'm not saying that it's okay to give up yards and we'll be fine. But and third down conversions, the Spartans were 11 of 19, and that's a little alarming. I mean, it's a little bit over 50%, and I'm not sure what their goal is. And I know this will get better because the coaching staff's working on it. Those players are working hard together, and they just need to work on those things when it comes to shutting those times down, because shutting down third down conversions, you can ask any coach in America, if they shut down third down conversions, they're gonna win a lot of games if that is one of their goals, and that's one of the things that they preach and try to abide by when it comes to that defensive unit. So nice job, and continue to work on those types of situations there. They did a great job in the red zone defensively. Only 40% which is outstanding. They gave up a touchdown and a field goal in the red zone, and that was it, folks. They were 2 of 5, that Spartan offense, against our defense, and that's wonderful. And on the other side, as far as our offense, we were 100%. They were 4 for 4 with touchdowns, and, oh, man, it's just when you have those two stat lines, your third down conversions, your red zone scores when it comes to touchdowns, and on your side, and it goes against the other team, wow, that's disheartening to the other team. That's intimidating. That is when they just start to kind of give up and dwindle down, and the Irish kind of take over there. So an outstanding job by the Irish as a whole, and I know those guys will come to practice this week with some great intentions of becoming 4-1. So I want to talk about some individual plays and stats along with that Spartan game. I thought it was a great job of the Irish offense of being very multidimensional and utilizing those players. And Tony, my co-host, has talked about this several times. Josh Adams has had several carries. Let's get Dexter Williams in there. Let's get Deion McIntosh in there. And guess what? They did that. They must have listened to our show and said, man, this guy knows his stuff. But I'm joking, by the way. That probably didn't happen. So, but Josh Adams had 9 carries for 57 yards. Obviously, Brandon is a type of quarterback that'll run here and there. He had 8 rushes. Dexter Williams had 8 rushes, and Deion McIntosh had 12. And so they had a total of 4 guys, almost at 40 carries together, almost an average of 10 per person. And having that multidimensional facet with those guys and their type of running style with that offensive line, that is potent. That is deadly, especially the rushing game. And so all those guys averaged over 3 yards a carry, a couple of them over 6 yards a carry. So, not only do you thank those rushers and you have those 4 guys with that multidimensional facet with that running game, but that offensive line has came to play the last, let's go with 6 quarters. They struggled against Boston College in the first 2 quarters of the game, and they turned it on in those last 2. So they're playing the last 6 quarters. They're playing some great ball, and those guys up front need to be commended for opening those holes for those rushers and many at that. So awesome job, Brandon Wimbush. As far as passing, he was more efficient, and I think that's very important for his development and obviously the success of the offense. He was 14 of 20, so much better this time as far as efficiency. He did pass for 173 yards and threw a touchdown. He got sacked 1 time. And the great thing also with that efficiency, he had 0 interceptions. And so he's being smart with the football. He's making sure he's taking care of himself. And as far as the passing standpoint, I think he is moving in the right direction. And going along with passing, the receiving part, if you happen to go back and look at several statistics in the receiving end when it comes to each game and the games that they won, that would correlate to something, because there are several guys this past game that had at least 1 reception, and 7 for that matter, by the way. And you go back and look at the games that they lost, which if you look at the Georgia game, it wasn't being passed around quite a bit to multiple people. And so they have to keep in mind how to be multidimensional, not only in the rushing game, but in that passing game, and getting those stars, those athletes in open space and getting that ball to them so they can make some moves and get down the field. St. Brown and Claypool both had 4 receptions. They both each had over 55 yards of receiving, which is outstanding. And, they had 5 other guys with at least 1 reception, 1 with 2 of them. And so I absolutely love how the offense have played this past game against those Spartans. So nice job, guys. And hopefully those guys will carry it over to next week. And I just want to, shout out to the defense again a little bit. They also had several guys in the solo and assist tackling section, and we had several quarterback hurries last year that was unheard of. And I know we're kind of done with talking about last year, but you got to kind of compare it a little bit if you're a fan and maybe even a coach, because if you look at last year, at this standpoint, they had very minimal, if not any, sacks or QB hurries. This year, I mean, they're having quite a few each game, and we had a total of 2 sacks this game, but they had 5 quarterback hurries, which is great. So they're getting to the quarterback on the defensive side. That front seven's doing an awesome job, and those guys are just being animals together on the defensive side, having that great attitude. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen this Saturday as they take on, and we segue to this game this week, September 30th, up in Notre Dame Stadium. They take on the Miami Redhawks of Ohio, NBC, and they have some kind of similarities as far as the two teams go, and they got some connections with each other, which I'll explain in the fun facts at the finish segment. But Notre Dame leads all-time 1-0. They've only played one other time, and it was 108 years ago. Wow, that was a long time. They actually shut them out 46-0 up at Notre Dame, and so that's kind of the background with the actual universities and the football teams. But they take on a Miami Redhawks team who is still trying to find their identity, trying to find ways to win. They lost a heartbreaking loss a few weeks ago to the University of Cincinnati team in the last few seconds, actually. So they're trying to rebound from that. They're 2-2. They're 1-0 in the MAC conference, and so they're coming hungry. They're going to come, and with the coach they have, Chuck Martin, who is an outstanding guy, things aren't going necessarily the way that they probably want them to go down there in Miami, Ohio, but they are making progress, and he's doing a nice job. So there are lots of things that they need to worry about when it comes to this team. Defensively, this team can shut them down. And I actually had a chance to watch the Miami Redhawks defense play especially. And those guys fly around. They're fast. They're athletic. And they play as a unit, kind of like our defense. And when you have a defense in general that will play together, that will know where each other can be at the snap of the ball and know their responsibility, it doesn't matter how athletic you are. If you're disciplined, then you will get the job done as a unit, and that's all really that matters, at least from my standpoint, for whatever that's worth. But they play these guys on Saturday, the Redhawks at 5 p.m. over on NBC if you want to check it out. Or if you want to make the trip up to Notre Dame and watch those guys. Notre Dame is now rated number 22 in the nation, so they're getting some great poll positions started, at least. They started at 25 at one point, and then they kind of got out when Georgia beat them. But Georgia, kind of getting sidetracked here for a second, Georgia's winning some ball games, and they're ranked as well. And as a fan, as a coach of, and even a player of that program, you want the Georgia Bulldogs to continue winning because that's going to help our chances of getting up higher in the rankings. And who knows what will happen. And we'll talk about that when the time comes. But those guys are rated number 22, so they have some work to do as well, being 3-1. But the Redhawks are going to come in and they're going to fight. Like I said, I watched them play, and they got a great quarterback, a local guy from Cincinnati, Ohio, so a hometown guy, and he's going to come up and try to lead those guys into Irish territory, into Irish land, and try to take the win going home, making them 3-2, which, in my opinion, is not going to happen. The Irish have too many things going for them. They have a lot of momentum coming out in these last 6 quarters of the last two games, and they definitely have that momentum. They have that kind of swag a little bit when it comes to those players and their relationships. And I think, going back to that relationship piece with the coaches, if you don't have that, then it's going to be a long, rough season, regardless of how some outcomes may happen. But those relationships are being built, and they're doing an awesome job there up in Notre Dame. So good luck to this week to the Irish football team. They take on the Miami Redhawks, and they're gonna get it done. I have a great feeling that they're going to be 4-1 after this Saturday, September 30th. So let's move on. Let's talk about the 3 toughest picks of the week. Actually, I'd rather not, because my record is outstandingly terrible. I mean, it's just embarrassing. I'm 3-9. The 3 means how many wins I've chosen, and 9 means how many losses, and I'm just going to own it because I've never been that bad. But you got to take the good with the bad, and vice versa. So I'm 3-9. Tony is an outstanding 8-4 at this point. So giving a shout out to Tony and how awesome he's doing making those picks. So which are tough, by the way. And with him not being able to make some picks this week, we'll kind of move on. But I just want to kind of give a shout out to Tony for doing an awesome job of making those picks and kind of embarrassed at my picks, to be honest with you. So it's time for Irish prediction. I think that Irish are going to come out to play hard. They have a great fan base when it comes to the games like this. And, Miami's going to travel well, too, so we got to be ready for that. But the Irish have so much momentum, like I've been talking about this whole show, and how they have done an awesome job of kind of rebooting themselves after those 2 quarters in Boston College. And they just have come out to play hard. They take advantage of things that happened for the other team in a negative way. And they need to make sure themselves that they don't come out to this game, come out light, come out thinking they're going to come win the game if they just show up. And they got to come out confident, but they got to come out and play hard. And no game is taken for granted. Those are like cliches, but those are true. Those are 1,000% true. And they need to understand coming out ready to play, coming through the week of practice and being crisp and going to the game plan and trusting it and trusting each other, just like they did last week with that distribution of the football on the offensive side. And defensively, continuing to get better with third down conversions, staying on top of the red zone scoring against them and shutting down that yardage, which will happen. I'm very confident in that. And so this week, I think the Irish are going to take them, and I think it's not going to be close, folks. I think they're going to come out to play. Coach Kelly and those staff members on his coaching staff will make sure that doesn't happen. I'm going to say it's going to be Irish 49, Miami of Ohio 14, and I think it's going to be just it's going to be a very lopsided game, in my opinion. I think the Irish need this to happen. If they want to increase their chances of moving up in the top 25 poll, they have to win games like this by a ton to be respected and continuing to be moving up in that top 25 poll. So I think that they need to do that, and I think that they will. We just need to make sure that support is there and those guys are staying with their responsibilities. As for the fun facts for the finish, I alluded earlier to this, and so there were some connections, and there is head coach from Miami of Ohio, Chuck Martin. If you've been a fan for the Irish for a while now, you know that him and Brian Kelly have a relationship when it comes to being coaches together. Back in 2000, all the way to 2000 to 2003, when Coach Kelly was at Grand Valley State as the head coach, Chuck Martin was underneath of him as far as an assistant, and he went off, Coach Martin did, and won a couple Division II national titles with Central Michigan. And then, you know what? He's actually a former Irish coach. He was an assistant under Coach Kelly in the 2010 to the 2013 seasons. And so a familiar face, again, with coaches that come from Coach Kelly's coaching tree and the pedigree that Coach Martin has in trying to turn that program around down there in Miami, Ohio. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen this week, as I think so anyway. But that's the fun facts for the finish. That wraps it up, folks. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate all the listeners out there. It seems each week we're getting more and more listeners with the different medias, such as our website, thegruelingtruth.net. We also have other media such as Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, which I alluded to earlier. That has, if you have an Apple phone, you go to the App Store, you can download the Grueling Truth app. You can subscribe to our shows. And it's not just our shows, folks. It's a lot of other shows, different sports, a lot of great hosts. So take some time to listen there. You can also listen to us on Google Music if you're a Samsung guy or girl, and iHeartRadio, which is an outstanding media as well. So tons of medias, tons of shows, not only just our Irish Football Weekly. I have one that's called The Real Deal, and Tony has one. I think he does one for the LA Rams now. And so have lots of shows, and lots of great insight and great hosts that do those shows. So, folks, thanks for listening again. This is your host, one of them at least, Josh Benjamin, signing off for Irish Football Weekly. Go Irish! Peace.